Ocarina of Time isn't just a video game to me, it's my favourite video game of all time, and for millions of others it remains one of, if not the greatest video game ever made. So when rumours and teasers of a modern remake started circulating online and then became official, you'd think my immediate reaction would be pure, unadulterated excitement. And in the past, I would have expressed extreme excitement. But this time that's not the case. Instead, I feel a deep sense of trepidation. Because a masterpiece doesn't just need a pretty coat of paint to survive a remake. It needs its soul intact. And I'm not entirely sure modern Nintendo operates on that wavelength anymore. To understand why I'm cautious, we have to look back to 2011, during the development of Ocarina of Time for the 3DS. Back then, Nintendo was led by Satoru Iwata, a brilliant programmer and CEO who famously declared on his business card that he was a corporate president, and in his mind he was a developer, but in his heart he was a gamer. He did these legendary Iwata-esque interviews with various developers and got real deep insight into how they worked and what was going on in their minds during production of games. One of which was an interview about an Ocarina of Time remake with Shigeru Miyamoto and Eiji Onuma, two of the main figureheads behind the success of Ocarina of Time and its original production. Shigeru Miyamoto and Eiji Onuma deeply debated what a remake should look like. Their conclusion was reflective of what made that design philosophy so successful in the first place. Any remake had to feel intimately familiar and be worthwhile. It couldn't alienate the player's memories, but it also needed to add something of value. Essentially, any additions had to protect and serve the existing legacy, not overwrite it. The result was a remake closer to a remaster, and that was Ocarina of Time 3D on the 3DS. Their approach respected the game's original roots entirely. It was a philosophy driven by developers who prioritised the player's nostalgia and desires over a corporate checklist. By today's standards, however, this would probably be classed more of a remaster than as a remake. Fast forward to today, and Nintendo feels entirely different. The focus in-house has evidently shifted towards a more rigid, highly calculated business strategy. If we think about it, we haven't seen a brand new mainline 3D Mario game since the launch era of the original Switch. The Mario-shaped hole in the current lineup is glaring. Meanwhile, Tears of the Kingdom, as enjoyable and impressive as it is, relied heavily on the systematic reuse of assets, physics engines, and much of the same world map and content from Breath of the Wild. We are creeping up on nearly a decade without a radically fresh, innovative mainline entry in either of the flagship franchises. Even their hardware strategy has changed in the last few years. With the Switch 2, Nintendo chose safety and hardware iteration over their classic, disruptive hardware innovation, and they did so at a premium price point. Nintendo today is a massive corporate juggernaut that moves with extreme corporate caution. Consumer nostalgia is no longer appeased to, it is arguably now a main weaponized tool for an emotional revenue source. So what happens if this risk-averse, creatively different Nintendo decides to fully rebuild Ocarina of Time? The absolute worst case scenario, and my biggest fear, is that they change too much on what the formula is, or take an easier approach, such as try to develop it within the modern Breath of the Wild engine. Ocarina of Time is a masterpiece because of its limitations. It is a brilliant, metronome-like puzzle box. Its dungeons rely entirely on strict item progression, locked doors, and deliberate pacing. You cannot solve the water temple if you just climb over the walls or fuse items together to bypass a puzzle. It felt open world back then too. It felt player-led, but it was also cleverly leading us along an orchestrated path of exploration. Should Nintendo decide to bend Ocarina of Time to suit a modern game experience or formula, it wouldn't really modernise the game. To me, it would fundamentally break its design philosophy. I admit that I want to see Ocarina of Time's Hyrule in modern, breathtaking fidelity just as much as anyone else would, but I only want it if Nintendo remembers the lessons and philosophies of old and the subsequent Iwata-led era that took them on. And while Nintendo has remade other games, including other Zelda games, they tend to be older, more simplistic games, and they're given a quite quirky, fresh lick of paint. But a true remake of arguably the greatest video game ever made deserves reverence, and not just a smart business model. It needs to balance that familiarity while offering something more. It can't be too different, nor should it just be prettier graphics. Until we see what they choose to do, and whether Aonuma still has a major input on the development of this, I'll remain somewhat cautious. But what about you? Do you trust modern Nintendo to handle the greatest game ever made? Let me know in the comments.